It is Super Bowl Sunday, but we're not going to talk about football because, as far as we're concerned, it's Super Bowl Sunday, and we're going to celebrate as we wish. Get in line for our communion. It's time for the rotation. Okay, here we are at 1714 West 7th Street in Ybor City, where it all began. Who is just still recovering from St. Iago's parade yesterday. I can tell all the bleachers are still out there.
Gasparilla Night Parade. That's the way we sing about it. Actually, it was crazy. It was just insane. That's not any way a representation of Gasparilla. It's just craziness, drunk people, all that shit. Chillum was like an oasis of cannabis and hemp and all that good stuff in the sea of drunkenness last night. It was awful.
Well, I'm just glad you like to keep your day job and not do the singing bit because Chillum itself is a fantastic CBD dispensary and art gallery over here in Ybor City, and a great place for us to have our show at the beginning of the day. Now, I am Gary Stein, your political director here at Suncoast Normal, and here ready to present to you a fantastic show we have today. And of course, I am with my co-host, deputy director, Carlos Ermida, whose main thrust in life is not only to have a good CBD store, but also to get salami out of all the Tampa Cuban sandwiches. Is that correct?
And I don't even eat meat.
And he doesn't even eat meat.
Yeah, I just don't want you to have it.
It's just the purity of the thing. And from beautiful Anne Arundel County, correct? It is a pleasure to introduce to you our executive director, hitting them above the beltway, especially when their pants are at their knees. It is Christopher Cano.
Well, thank you for that riveting introduction, Gary. And Carlos, your heresy of the Tampa Cuban sandwich will not stand on my watch.
I'm sorry.
This crusade, this inquisition you have to get salami out of it, just is insulting to my Italian.
Why is it that that the only place where Tampa invented the Cuban sandwich is Tampa? That's the only place in the world. That's the only place in the world where people say, "Oh, the Cuban sandwich is invented here."
We can claim oneness to that. We can claim ownness for that. But anyway, speaking of lunch meats, especially bologna, what is going on in DC right now, Chris?
Well, we reported last week on the Safe Banking Act now advancing to the Senate. And interesting news coming out of the Senate. The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is now actually provided a timeline for the introduction of his long-awaited marijuana descheduling legislation known as the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. And he plans to actually have that formally introduced in April. So, a little 420 present coming along. The release of the draft form went out last July, and this repeals federal marijuana prohibition by removing cannabis entirely from the United States Controlled Substances Act. Now, it also specifically addresses some points that NORML has been calling for, and it strengthens the civic protections, including record relief to provide justice to those previously wronged by federal marijuana criminalization, revising outdated employment policies regarding non-scientific testing for trace metabolites of THC, ensuring that small and local businesses can compete with the larger corporations and the unregulated market by reducing the regulatory and tax burdens on those businesses. Narrowing the scope of the proposed excise tax to exempt medical cannabis consumer markets, and balancing the roles of the FDA, the Alcohol, Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, the ATF, and antitrust regulators in a manner that's consistent with the other adult use substances that we have out there, such as alcohol or tobacco, to ensure non-disruption of the currently operated state programs and promoting increased local ownership in future iterations of the cannabis marketplace.
That's a lot of moving parts to this bill. It's interesting to see if they can wrap their head around it. I'm interested in knowing about reducing the tax burden, though. Does that mean the 208E is going to disappear?
Well, this bill is competing against two other House bills, the MORE Act, which we've seen, and the States Reform Act, which is another bipartisan piece of cannabis legislation. Both seek to deschedule cannabis at the federal level. I encourage folks to definitely research the individual pluses and minuses of each. Like you said, Gary, there are tax benefits and tax burdens depending on which piece of legislation is being pushed through.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the fact that the full legalization, where they're envisioning it over in D.C., is going to make corporate cannabis the norm and get rid of all the small operators across the country, which would be a great disservice.
Well, that's exactly what this piece of legislation aims to prevent from happening, at least in theory. We'll see what the final versions are that pass each, chamber and make it to the president's desk. The legislative process can be quite messy.
Yeah, absolutely. And in response to the discussion of corporate cannabis becoming slowly the norm and kind of changing our entire cannabis culture, I'd like to introduce to you our special guest in the secret square today. Malcom Mackinnon, also previously known as Dan Sky, is the editor-in-chief of High Times magazine from the 90s all the way through to the mid-aughts, and saw 25 years of absolutely fantastic photography that we saw, we came to expect from High Times, and was in a different iteration. Now, my first High Times remembrance is back in the 70s, going ahead and clipping the coupons and getting those buttons to go ahead and start growing mushrooms in the basement in a ball jar. And I remember actually harvesting those suckers, trying to go on what's that called, Magic Mountain over there at Disney World. And we had a great ride, except we found out later on that it wasn't actually open that day. But that's besides the point. But High Times has been interwoven into the whole fabric of the culture as it reemerged in the 70s and 80s, and you had a chance to see almost all the icons, some of them which are disappearing nowadays.
Yes, I have. First, let me correct you. I wasn't editor-in-chief all through my 25-year career. I ended my career as editor-in-chief. So
Gotcha.
I'll make that clear. A lot of other great people were editors before me. Steve Hager was editor-in-chief, of course. He started the Cannabis Cup. A great deal of credit goes to him for moving the magazine toward marijuana in a big way. As far as your question is concerned, sometimes I feel like the Forrest Gump of cannabis. I was there at so many different moments. I got to meet all the icons, photograph them of the movement. And I was there when Woody Harrelson tried to plant 4 seeds in Kentucky to protest the anti-hemp laws. I was there when the Lakota tried to grow hemp for 3 consecutive years on the Pine Ridge Reservation. I was there with the Navajo Hemp Project when we brought 100 pounds of seeds onto the reservation, trying to jumpstart cannabis there. I was a tremendous career, and I feel incredibly blessed. I happened to be there at the right time. There were certainly a lot of people before me. I started my career with High Times in 1991. But of course, the hemp movement had started prior to that. You had people like Jack Harris, Steve D'Angelo, Debbie Goldsberry, all on the hemp tours in the 80s, jump-starting this incredible movement that we have.
I know we lost Eddie Lepp this last August.
Yeah, I knew Eddie as well, photographed him. Interesting guy, very, very colorful, liked the limelight, and was very effective when he was in it.
I know they had a picture of him in the High Times this last August when he passed away. I didn't see a byline, but I was wondering if that might have been one of your pictures, because you did a lot
I can't recall the
pictures.
picture. Certainly, I know I have plenty of photos of Eddie. I have one that's going to show up in the book that I'm working on. A great shot of him with his cannabis leaf medallion around his neck, and great big blunt in his hand.
That was the picture. It was cut off right about at the eyebrows, right there and he was wearing dark round sunglasses.
Yeah, yes, that's my shot. Now, he was a character. He really was. He'll be missed.
I'm surprised they didn't give you a byline. That's kind of like one of the big no-nos in the industry. I do a lot of journalism, and if I don't reference everything that I use, there's usually heck to play.
Well, a lot of my photos still show up in the magazine, and it just says HD Archives. I don't mind. I know what I've shot, and certainly when I'm done with this book, people will know whose photos are whose. I'm not really particularly offended by that. I mean, High Times gave me a career. They're free to use any magazine that was printed in the magazine. No problem here.
I mean, the experiences that you've had, just to put up a couple of my icons on the page.
Okay.
Like, I kind of like it's interesting because I learned about a lot of my icons through you, believe it or not. Yeah, and like for example, like this picture. This picture is your own, correct?
Yes, it is.
Sweet.
Yeah, Jack, I shot that in January 1995. And I'm a guerrilla photographer. I try to get my shots when I could. So I set Jack up in his bedroom and shot a great big lamp right into his face, and color corrected it as much as I could because we're shooting in on film, and I got lucky. I really did. But this was shot with there were a few people standing around, helping me. I styled Jack. I blew dry his hair, tried to make him look presentable, and I came up with this iconic shot. But
And you actually got him in a suit.
That's 100% hemp suit. Okay.
Okay, I mentioned this gentleman before we started the show, but Dennis Perron, who I feel is one of like the most important cannabis activists of the cannabis industry. Literally started the industry.
He and Jack are on a par. I mean, you have to understand, Dennis was very, very astute politically. He saw what was happening in the gay community and how AIDS was ravaging people, and how cannabis was having a beneficial effect on them. And so he knew politics. And so he was forthright. He was unafraid. He pushed marijuana forward like nobody else. He and Jack are equals as far as I'm concerned. I met him a few times. I got to go to the San Francisco Compassion Club in 1994. That was the very, very first compassion club in the country. And really, a tremendous pioneer in our movement. Arrested hundreds of times, not hundreds, but many, many times for his.
At least his business was raided hundreds and hundreds of times.
Understand, Dennis was also the biggest pot dealer in San Francisco there for a while. In the 70s, he was something else, and also, he was a cohort of Harvey Milk. So all of these people, are icons in our movement. Dennis was unafraid, and people don't understand how powerful he was. Just this little guy with a very elfin type voice, but certainly, man, he was a powerful force. Something else. I photographed this on his at his home in San Francisco, on his terrace.
And of course, one of the most famous cannabis potheads ever.
No, I shot this when Tommy was going through his arrest, through his legal proceedings, when he was arrested for selling bongs during the 2004 Operation Green Merchant and Operation Headhunter and Operation Pipe Dreams, launched by the government, where they arrested people who had transported pipes over state borders, arrested them overnight, trashed their shops, seized their assets. Tommy was involved in that. So so I wanted to take this shot of him. And he called me about 3 days later after I took the shot and said, "Do not publish that. It's going to look like I'm making fun of my arrest. My lawyer says don't publish it." So I'm going to publish that in my book. But I went to Tommy's production office, and so I just set him up on the stairs and put him behind the gates in order to get this jail photo.
I mean, you've seen so much, and you've been there basically through it all, right? Documented most of this movement, right? So I have to ask. I have to ask. One of the things that we do on the show is complain about the current state of the movement. And I gotta are you happy where things have ended up? Are you happy with the progress of cannabis?
I don't mean to sound like an old fogey or anything like that, but I think there is a lot of disrespect toward the people who started this movement, the people who were the pioneers, the people who really this industry sits on their shoulders. They laid the foundation, and a lot of people don't even understand how dangerous, really ridiculously perilous marijuana was during the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s, and it still is today. They think that they're making money with their CBD company, or they're making money off their dispensary and so forth, and life is good. And so I think there's a great deal of disrespect to the people who got us there. A lot of these people never got credit. A lot of them have passed away. And so, that's just something I think that this movement is not getting the proper historical context, proper historical respect, I should say. Maybe my book will help along that way, because I'm going to highlight these people. I'll have a whole chapter devoted to the leaders, the people who were in front of my camera, not everybody, but certainly I have 70, 80 people who I came across during my time who have been instrumental in moving this issue forward.
I understand that you also invented bud porn.
Bud porn? No. Listen, there are a few photographers at High Times. Well, that is quite nice. No, I shot. Yeah,
that's beautiful.
I love that sunburst. That was
Yeah,
the
I was
sunburst
lucky.
filter, right?
Well, no. That was I just shot into the sun. Sometimes I shoot into the sun quite a bit. This is taken in Trinity County. This is look out, look how rugged that area is. This is tiny garden in this huge expansive space. I love that shot. Um, but this is a hemp field in Amsterdam. I got up on top of the harvester in order to get this shot and used a fisheye lens, and really it just an experience when the harvester is moving, you really feel like you're surfing on top of a hemp field. It's something else. But I hesitate to call it bud porn because first of all, porn has bad connotations. Because certainly in Better Homes and Gardens and in Garden Magazine, they don't call it rose porn. So these are shots of beautiful plants.
I think
and
I've heard Gary say rose porn before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I have
There are
done
other-
that. Back in the 80s, I was doing some photography myself. I had a Pentax and a Leica and things of that sort. And at that time we had brickweed. I tried my best to try to make it look good, and I could not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, certainly it's a real pleasure to shoot these plants because they come in so many forms and so many different colors and so many different shapes when they're processed. So yeah, I've shot the gamut when it comes down to it.
Well, Malcolm, some of the favorite shots of mine, during your course of high times were always the top strains on Earth or the top, the best ones of the year. How far back were you shooting those top strains? Because I saw some gnarly pictures from the top strains of the late 70s and comparing them to the beauties that you shoot now. And I was just like, wow, look how far we've come.
Well, there were a lot of other photographers for high times too. Not a lot, but there were some really great. By Freebie was a great one. Andre Grossman, of course, he was the master. He came before me. You have Steve Eichner. So there are people who were shooting all kinds of pot, along with me. I didn't necessarily shoot the top strains of the year. I was I'm also not just a photographer. I'm a journalist, and so I published more features in the magazine than probably in the history of the magazine. More of my features were published. So all of my photos had to do with editorial coverage. Not all of them, because I certainly shot a lot of still lifes just for the hell of it, but I didn't really shoot the strains of the year. Strains of the year were usually shot in studio. I'm not a studio photographer. As I said, I'm a guerrilla photographer. I get out there and take my opportunities as they come. That's kind of how I work.
I met a gentleman from who hangs out in Amsterdam, calls himself, I think it's Captain Hooters. He wrote
you got Ed Borgen in Amsterdam as well, great photographer who shot at a lot of stuff for high times. Mel Frank, Ed Rosenthal's a great photographer. So there are great cannabis photographers out there,
and a decent grower too.
Oh yeah, I've heard. Yeah, Ed, yeah. I used to be an editor for Ed Rosenthal. What an experience that was.
Yeah, I attended a lecture he gave at Oaksterdam once, and I remember somebody coming in with food, and it was like the end of the world. Right? Like he would not continue until the food was in the garbage and everybody was paying attention to him. Right? What was that like working with Ed Rosenthal? You got a crazy story for us or anything like that?
He wanted things his way. That's for sure. One time I remember he got a little bit upset at me because in 1994 he challenged Jack Harrer for his if anybody can disprove anything I've written in The Emperor Wears No Clothes, I'll pay them $10,000. So Ed said that he had found something that was incorrect, and he went after Jack, and it really became a thing. And Jack was taking it very personally, and Ed was probably right. Jack had exaggerated something in the book, but it became a thing. So I just kind of sniped at Ed, in the magazine, which he did not appreciate too much.
I've seen a lot of pictures of the various cultural icons that you've taken over time, and some of them have blunts and joints, and some of them don't. Were any of them that absolutely refused to smoke in front of you?
Well, I'll tell you this much: Woody Harrelson would not pose with pot. Now, I shot him for the cover of High Times. I shot him for 2 covers of Hemp Times, and I was certainly around Woody enough and smoked pot with him, but he would not do it. And
so this was okay.
Yeah,
but posing with pot is not
in
okay.
Kentucky in 1996 when he tried to planted 4 hemp seeds. But as far as posing with pot, he figured that was a step too far. But I'll tell you this much: when that happened, that was 2000. We kind of said from that moment on, said if a celebrity's not going to pose with pot, he's not going to be on the cover. That's all there is to it. You know, they got to be in our ballpark. So that kind of was a game changer. Woody had put himself out there in a big way as a celebrity, and you had used his celebrity to move this whole thing forward. I think he's taken a kind of a lower profile now. I know he still gives a lot of money to causes and so forth, but he did his time, and we couldn't really demand that he posed with pot with all the work he had done. So he that was his he was 4 or 5 years into this. And I was there, throughout Woody's trial and through the litigation after he grew, planted the 4 hemp seeds, and it finally ended in the year 2000. And just for some historical context, on the same day that he was acquitted by a jury for challenging these laws, the Lakota's hemp crops were raided by the FBI on the very same day. Now, if you don't tell me that's coincidence, that's not a coincidence. That was on purpose. Woody gets acquitted, we're going to go after the Native Americans, and we're going to stop their hemp. So that was a kind of a bittersweet day back in.
I was wondering how they got away with doing that kind of thing on sovereign land.
Yeah, well, it's not quite as sovereign as we think, or as the Indians are led to believe.
I mean, I know I'm interested in what the peyotes have done over in Vegas there with their new dispensary. They've really done really good work out that way.
Yeah, there are a few tribes that I think that are getting somewhere. The Paiutes. It's a hard road to start up a new industry without the proper support and the proper logistics to do it. It's very, very difficult, especially on poor reservations. I know a lot of people on Pine Ridge. I have a lot of connections there, and I've helped them out and acquired seeds for them. They're trying very, very hard to get things going. A very, very poor reservation. So it's, hopefully things can move forward, but there are a lot of people also moving in and taking advantage of the tribes, being issued licenses or permits, and suddenly, who's making all the money, so it's, every reservation is different.
I got to ask you about your editorials. So you wrote so much for this magazine. This magazine, it does have a reputation for being lighthearted, but there is a strong contribution to activism here. Like right. There's a huge contribution. Like this was the way back in the day that people found out about what was going on in the movement and how that was working. So in a big way, you drove the movement itself. What is your favorite contribution the magazine had towards the movement?
Well, the thing is, remember that the High Times started. It was very, very political in nature. It was in your face magazine. I remember one time an editor said, there was some kind of discussion going on, and John Holmstrom was the publisher at that time. Really very, very great publisher. And the editors, John asked me, "What do you think this magazine's about?" And because it's about peace and love. And he said, no, it's about doing what you want, and the hell with anybody else. That's what it's about. So that was the thing all the way through, always pushing forward, just trying to push through all the mores and the taboos about cannabis, about alternative consciousness. We supported Native American causes, we supported civil rights causes, and called out the people in power when they were doing something stupid, which was pretty damn easy to do.
But is there anything in particular, like you look back and you're like, man, like that's my favorite contribution. That's what, this wouldn't have gone down if it wasn't for me. And you know what I'm trying to get at here? Like, what are you most proud of?
I kind of pushed the Navajo Hemp Project forward because I wanted to do that story. So I asked the activists in Arizona to really help with that. Christy Bowling and Patrick Lang were who Christy's passed on, but they pushed that forward. They orchestrated getting the seeds onto the reservation. Chris Boucher, who's a great hemp farmer in California, who's been an activist for years, he was instrumental in that. So I tried to push that forward. One of the funny things that happened also that I interviewed Jesse Ventura when he was running for governor in Minnesota. We timed that for the election. To come out. I called. It was so funny. I called Jesse on the phone when he's doing his radio show, and they said, "We'll get right back to you." And he got on the phone with me. He says, "I knew you guys were coming for me." And so I went out.
That's a great Jesse Ventura.
Interviewed him and took his photos and so forth and so on. And so that was published on right before the election. And the nice thing about Minnesota is you can register for the vote on election day. So a lot of people felt that interview kind of swung things in Minnesota because he made a great plea for hemp in Minnesota. So he was that was Jesse. I interviewed him 17 years later. He's still the same guy. Yeah. You lose my sound? Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, we got you, Malcolm. Your book is folks are already asking where can they get a copy? When can they get a copy?
When I get the goddamn thing done. I mean, seriously. You have to. It's about 190 pages right now, honestly.
Wow.
And there's that many photos. I mean, this covers hemp, native hemp, the leaders of the movement, the icons of the movement, still lifes, gardens, and I'm not just throwing photos up against the wall and say, hey, this is great. Look at all the stuff. I really tried to pick out my best photos, and I have literally hundreds of thousands of shots that I've done over the years. I have a whole, file cabinet full of slides here in back of me, and then I have, hundreds of thousands of digital shots. So it's, getting this stuff scanned, and of course, all the slides, you got to fix all those, get all the dirt off them, and this is a very, very long process, and I'm trying to push it forward. Actually, Ed Rosenthal, who I don't want to demean at all. He's a great person in our movement. He's expressed interest in publishing that. I'm also looking at self-publishing it. So hopefully this year, at some point, this thing will get out of my hair because I feel like it's something I have to do, and it's driving me. And so I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. So I have to get it out there, and I'm looking forward to see the reaction. Seriously, I think.
Have you ever done a presentation with a carousel projector?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Mine broke.
That's a boomer question. You guys don't understand what the heck we're talking about here.
Mine broke.
It's like carousel projector.
Those used to be great days at High Times when somebody would go out on a story and bring back slides, and we'd look at the slides, in the editorial meetings. It was always kind of exciting, to see what we got there from the road,
Yeah, High Times, from essentially 2002 to 2012 was those were my key college years, and
okay.
it was a publication that really got me interested in just the activism side of things, and also reading Jack Herrera's book, The Emperor Has No Clothes, really helped me with my master's thesis. I probably wouldn't be where I am today without the influences of people like yourself, of people like him, and it's interesting how something who you may have done so many years ago can influence people, so far down the network. And it's an honor to get a chance to actually meet you in person.
No, thanks. Thanks so much. I mean, 2010, 2012, that's when we brought the Cannabis Cup to the United States. So, that we had those, I'll tell you, those were really glory years. I mean, it was suffering a little bit because, the cup publishing industry was beginning to dwindle. Suddenly we brought the cup to the United States, and we had about 5 terrific years there, man. We were just kicking ass. I mean, we really were building something. And then in 2017, everything kind of went haywire. 2016, 2015, that kind of way things went haywire. New owners, new management. In some ways, I think the magazine lost its way.
Where was the beginning of that decline, you think?
Well, Michael Kennedy was from one of the founders of the magazine, along with Tom Forsyth, the original publisher. He had been the legal counsel for High Times since 1974. He passed away in 2015. And so he stepped down, and he died subsequently 6 months later. But he stepped down. A new management team was brought in. We went into debt extremely quickly. The cup probably wasn't as managed as well as it could have been, and then they moved out to L.A., which I always found they always thought, well, that's where the industry is. I said, folks, we got more population here on the East Coast between Boston and Washington than California and everything. Oregon and Washington combined. This is where the new movement's going to be. This is why leave. We're here now. But they left and they went to California. And look at California now. I mean, my God, what a complete mess they've made of the cannabis industry out there. So it's, big dreams. You got to stay on the road that got you there. As far as running a business, you cannot betray your audience. You've got to, stick to your guns, and you got to be honest.
You made a comment about how where things are is very disrespectful to the founders of this movement. How do we bring it back? How do we You know, what would you like to see change? Like,
Well,
what?
I don't know how you do that. Otherwise, I don't know how you get people to read and understand the history. A lot of people don't even know who Jack Harrer is. They think Jack was is a strain. There's some made up
Yeah.
strain. So,
Yeah, damn good one.
yeah, I don't think I hope my book, sells millions of copies and everybody will understand what this movement meant. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know how we get there. So it's history, and it's the history that I think is being forgotten. That people once again do not understand how perilous smoking, growing, dealing, whatever. I mean, you were taking your life in your hands. You could have all your assets seized through forfeiture laws. You could have your family torn apart. This was all for marijuana. Tommy Chong served a year in jail for making bongs, for Christ's sake. This people don't understand. That was only 20 years ago. That was 20 years ago, less than 20 years. So people do not know how dangerous this was. They really don't.
Yeah.
And so and it's still dangerous in a lot of places. I mean, the funny thing is, Colorado, I go up to Pine Ridge Reservation a lot. I have to go through Nebraska. No thanks. And if you go east from Colorado, you're going through Kansas. No, thank you. So there's some dangerous places out there where you should not be smoking pot without a little bit of care. So I don't know how, this is it's a personal gripe of mine. I discussed it with a lot of the people who were there from the beginning. Richard Rose, for example, a great hempster. Kristala Musato Allen, another one. People who have been there since the beginning and have seen this movement, and they get tired of the disrespect. And the thing is, they're not listened to. They don't understand what this original marijuana consciousness was, how we felt about the plant. Now people, they are kind of equated with dollar signs. So maybe I sound old, whatever. I am. I'm 68. Spent a third of my life with High Times, though, so I think I can speak from I have some credibility, I think.
Florida has gone through kind of a microcosm of what the country has. I mean, when I first started making cannabis legal here in Florida, and I worked with the legislation, unfortunately, with Matt Gaetz, we started out strictly working on getting it in the hands of patients. And
Right.
I was laser focused in the fact that here we had a plant that we are suddenly realizing has so many more applications than we ever even realized it, even though we knew it was being used for medicine for many, many years. But a lot of us didn't see that corporate tsunami that was really building up behind us.
The suits, they were coming. We always worried about them. We wanted marijuana to go mainstream. The thing is, my feeling, and this is how Jack felt, and I know a lot of the other OGs felt, I want it to be like tomatoes. All right, you can grow it in your backyard. You can give some to your neighbor. You can sell some to your neighbors. I think if you normalize it to that extent, it's not going to be a big deal. They've made too much. It made this whole issue so toxic. The people, the whole driving thing, being caught at work with the smoking. The laws are not equal as far as alcohol in any way, shape, or form. There's still a huge stigma around marijuana. So, I don't know what the original question was now. So,
no, that's a very valid point. I was just in Dominican Republic for the holidays, and it's not like you can't get it there, but like you said, to get caught with it, people think you're just a bad person, and I'm just sitting there like, you're an alcoholic judging me. Get out of here.
Right. I mean, you look at the opioid epidemic. 700,000 people have died from this. And
if one more person judges me through a fucking Xanax haze about my marijuana smoking, I swear to God, I'm gonna have a fucking fit. Like, if one more housewife fucking looks at me depressed and needing fucking Xanax to fucking feel better about herself, and judges me because I fucking have a fucking weird beard or whatever and I smell like pot, like, I'm gonna fucking flip.
Or getting angry at us for trying to make certain that kids have access to it if they have epileptic fits and things of that. They're actually selling Adderall lollipops out there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I remember I did a story once in Michigan with 4 sets of parents who had disabled children whose children were benefiting from marijuana. It was a very heartbreaking story. And, this is the thing. I've done a lot of those stories as well. I remember when I met Rudy Reyes out in California, and he's a very tough activist who was burned very, very severely in one of the San Diego wildfires. And he's become a very top activist. And he introduced me to a number of burn victims. I went to the World Burn Congress and met all these people who had gone through horrific experiences. And it was it's very, very sobering story that I did. But you find how do you argue with a burn victim or a burn survivor? How do you say no marijuana for you after what they've been through? Seriously. So as Valerie Corral of Wham always said, its value lies in its ability to heal people. That is marijuana's real value. And I've always felt that high times is kind of a misnomer, because I don't think we really do smoke to get high, do we? I mean, I'm going to go get high. I'm going to, get buzz or, shit face or whatever. You smoke to feel better. That's why we smoke. It feels better than you do right now. People drink coffee to feel a little bit better. People have a drink to take the edge off. So I always thought high times would have been better served if it was called better times.
Of course, we're all friends here with Irv Rosenfeld over here.
Irv, something else. Yep.
We've all smoked the stuff that he gets from the University of Mississippi, and I got to tell you, you can't possibly get high off of that stuff.
No.
It's just not possible. But it works for Irv.
Yeah,
10 times a day.
Elvie brought up her tin to high times. Elvie Masika, who's also one of the federally licensed patients, and we looked at it and we said, "I ain't smoking that stuff. That is awful." Irv. I met Irv and photographed him. He's part of the book as well, and so is Elvie. So it's amazing how many people I'm truly amazed myself how many people I've met and photographed. I mean, seriously.
And of course, Bob Platform is also down here, the Black Tuna guy himself.
He's something else.
The ultimate hype man.
Oh, man. Well, the guy's got cred. I mean, not that many years in prison. Now he's doing his thing. And now I'll tell you, that guy's something else. He never stops too. His silver tour is a great, great thing. It really is.
Well, Malcolm, you mentioned earlier about High Times' political angle. I recall reading a lot of those issues during the 2000s, and where very few media outlets were willing to critique the war on terror and where we were in Afghanistan and such. And one of the things that stuck out to me was seeing some of our troops, fighting in hemp fields that are 12 feet tall
Right.
in the middle of Afghanistan, and that really stuck with me.
Yeah, I edited those stories. There was a veteran who wrote that story. And he brought me a tremendous amount of photos where these guys standing in hemp fields. Yeah, that was something else. We also, there were a number of vets that were hooked up with High Times through the Cannabis Cup, where we would hold seminars, and we did a vets and pot issue, and had one of the vets pose for us. And so we tried to stand with the people who supported marijuana. That goes for any ethnic group. I mean, so we covered everything that had to do with marijuana as well. I mean, we covered fracking, and the dangers of fracking. And one of the most controversial articles we ever published. They said, "Why are you publishing this? That's nothing to do with High Times." Really? Fresh water has nothing to do with High Times? What are you, nuts? We published an article. I went up to Standing Rock when the Dakota Pipeline was trying to be put through the reservation. So we covered those kind of issues that affected our community, whether they know it or not. Yeah. And I remember when we also championed gay rights. I remember when we put Dan Savage in the magazine. I interviewed him for the feature interview. We got a lot of complaints. Why are you covering homosexuals so prominently? I mean, like, covering homosexuals. We had a gay guy in the interview slot, very prominent dude, it's weird stuff.
We're focusing a lot on cannabis as well, being a normal chapter podcast, but the cannabis isn't the only thing that High Times has reported on. A big part. It was counterculture in general. A big part of that was psychedelics, and how the psychedelic movement's kind of like taking grasp now.
Well, back in '93, we ran a psychedelics cover. We had an LSD cover. So that was 30 years ago now, but still we were out there pushing psychedelics onto the American public. We were championing them as they have benefits. They open windows in our brains. They open windows to what this experience of living is all about.
And Timothy Leary had a lot to do with the reemergence of cannabis.
Sure. Well, Timothy Leary, there were a lot of people. Terrence McKenna, of course, he was instrumental, really, really pushing the use of psychedelics forward, and very brilliant man.
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved the Stone Ape theory. That's always been one of my classic pieces of science.
What would you like to see the psychedelic movement? Where would you like to see it go? As far as like in it differently than the cannabis movement? Like,
Well,
I don't know. Am I saying that right?
Says the guy who wants to sell them.
It's not something I'm particularly involved in one way or another. I kind of subscribe to what Ken Kesey said about psychedelics. You can't keep going through the same door over and over and over again. You've got to move forward. So, I certainly had my experiences. I think that psychedelics have to be approached with caution. They're not a panacea. They're not for everyone. Just as cannabis isn't for everyone. So, I'd like to see people move forward with caution on this subject. I'm not completely on board with the whole psychedelic. I don't want to see things be made illegal either. So I think there's a lot of care to be taken as far as that subject is concerned.
And I always recommend to folks to read the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test.
Yeah,
it's a wonderful book.
To see an OG like you, I see a theme, and you even highlighted it at one point where you're an OG. Like you started off in this movement, at a time where it was basically like, smoking pot is a victimless crime, but yet you still remain to the medical side of things quite a bit. Even when I just asked you about psychedelics, you seem to just, approach with caution, get what you need from it and move on.
Right, exactly.
I appreciate that, like it's really nice to see somebody like really approaching things from the scientific side of things.
Right. There's a lot of science out there. There's a lot of things to be read. I think everybody should be well versed in the knowledge of what psychedelics do before they use them. Certainly, we have a tremendous amount of information out on cannabis, and people can use it, we know, safely. So, I remember somebody came to me and said, "What about bringing psychedelics onto the Indian reservation?" I said, I said it straight up. I said, the Native Americans have enough problems with meth on the reservations right now. I don't think that we should be introducing something new like that. I don't think it's really a good idea. I don't think people should be bringing psychedelics to the reservation. I mean, they're very, very conscious about the need for sobriety on the reservation because of it's not all reservations, but certainly there's a great deal of alcohol abuse and substance abuse on native reservations. So once again, this has got to be approached cautiously.
Cool. Now, I wanted to because we're still talking a little bit about your book and your photography here before we move on to other things. How much you've covered the Native American movement over the last couple of decades. I'm interested in knowing how you got involved in that, and especially how you got a chance to meet Leonard Peltier and what's going on with him now.
Well, I'll be honest. In 1990, Peter Gorman, who was a senior editor at that time, invited me to go out for a story that he was doing on the Native American Church, and I did a Native American Church ceremony. This was in August of 1990, and I won't go into it too much, but it was very, very transformational. It's a peyote ceremony that lasts all night long, and in some way, this put me on this path of Native American photography. I've been doing it since then constantly. I have a tremendous archive of it, and that would be my next book that I'm going to publish. But anyway, it's something that I've just done and continue to do, and at High Times, of course, facilitated my ability to go to different reservations and do these different stories with the Navajo and the Utes in Colorado and the Lakota on Pine Ridge. A lot of these stories coincided with High Times coverage, so I was able to really further my archive. Leonard Peltier, people should go to whoisleonardpeltier.info to find out about his case, but it's one of the worst miscarriages in the history of the United States. He's been in jail for 46 years for defending his people in a shootout on the Pine Ridge Reservation where 2 FBI agents were killed. People should read about this. Just in a nutshell, the FBI agents didn't identify themselves, and the Indians thought they were under attack. So you can read more about this. But anyway, I've interviewed Peltier 3 times for the magazine at different stages, and visited him in prison in 2016. He's in very, very poor health, and he should be pardoned, and people should call the White House and urge President Biden to pardon this man. I don't know if he'll survive because he's also contracted COVID. So this is Leonard Peltier is one of the saddest stories in American history. If you read what the feds did to this man, how they falsified evidence, falsified ballistic reports, coerced witnesses, it's a terrible, terrible tragedy. People can also see the documentary film Incident at Oglala. That's on YouTube. So I urge everybody to check that out.
Carlos, did you want to show some of the pictures that he sent to us in
Please
regards
do.
to
Let's
your
get
Native American folks?
Go back to the photos.
Yeah, any particular photo that is your favorite?
Geez, well, my best experience. I don't know if you have the shot there of the bales of the centerfold. In 1997, I was doing a lot of stories out in Arizona, and I knew a couple smugglers who were moving loads every now and then. And I would, that's not the load, but that's a lot of bales from another smuggler.
Found it.
There we go. Yeah, right there. So anyway,
Sorry, the
Wow.
pictures are really,
Quite all
really
right.
tiny.
I wanted to
That's why they call them thumbnails, guys.
I wanted to photograph one of these people, one of the smugglers' loads. And so one day they said, all right. I mean, I asked a number of times, and they said, all right, you can do it. We'll see what we can do. So I rode around with them for about 2 hours, and they went from phone booth to phone booth, calling the people who had the pot until it was ready to move in. So we went to a Del Taco parking lot on the outskirts of Phoenix. We drove into the parking lot. Somebody drove into the parking lot. My friend walked over to them. They had a chat. He looked at me, and my friend comes back to the car and says, okay, you can shoot the load, but you're going to have to drive it. And I said, drive it? And I said, how much is there? He says, it's 100 pounds. And I said, okay. I said, it's a big risk because I don't know how you're going to explain to the cops. I'm just a journalist shooting 100 pounds of pot. But anyway, I drove the load through all these, desert neighborhoods, and we drove into a safe house, and we set this shot up in the garage. It was 117 degrees that day. It was hot as hell. And so I shot 100 pounds, and we put a suitcase there, and this became the 1997 July centerfold in High Times magazine. So that was probably the riskiest thing I ever did. Because hell, I mean, you get caught with 100 pounds. I think that's a serious felony, and regardless of whether I'm a journalist, I'm still going to have to deal with the law. So,
Yeah, we still have people who've had 25, 30 years in prison for having just a joint or a bud.
Right. This was I did a number of stories with the NFL players. I interviewed quite a few of them, from Ricky Williams, Warren Sapp, Jake Plummer, because we were talking about how cannabis should be legal in the NFL. So I went up to Rhode Island and set this shot up with a football helmet and put all the buds in there, and that became the cover photo for my lead feature photo for my article on that. That was a lot of fun. I rely on growers so much for what they do to provide me with shots. This shot right here, that's we had this horrible looking brickweed out in Arizona. We didn't know what to do with it. I said, let's make a sandwich out of it. So we made it look like a sandwich. It fooled a lot of people. Was that rye bread? What kind of bread is that?
That's not a bread.
That's better than Ezekiel bread, isn't it?
This
wow.
People thought we photoshopped this. This was not photoshopped. We had a makeup designer from Saturday Night Live do this, and we glued. It was a very complicated process. Took about a day to do it, but we glued all these buds to his head, all the way down, and shot this on a rooftop in New York, because we didn't, I had to, how are you going to get, once you get the pot on top of the person's head? I can't shoot it in an apartment where there's no light, so we had to go somewhere. So we ran up to this roof of the apartment building in New York and shot this. And I shot about maybe 36 shots. I said, we got it, let's go. And so
and
At the time, human chia pet.
One of my favorite directors right here.
Oh yeah.
Jake.
Well, this is great. I shot Kevin in his backyard in Studio City. And he asked, he said, is this stuff real? I go, yeah, man, this ain't Hollywood. This was before he was a stoner. And I shot Jason Mewes in New Jersey. So the art director, Frank Max, put Jason on top of his shoulder as a devil. And unfortunately, this did not sell well because its release coincided with 9/11. And this magazine.
Oh.
So, it just did not do well at all. People were buying news magazines. People had other things on their mind. So this did not do well.
You had a lot of outdoor shots of some decent buds too. I love that one.
Yeah, I always like to shoot outdoors. This was fun. The blue-eyed dog just makes it. He kept looking at his owner. Finally, we put the food behind the bud to make him look over there. So
Yeah, You know what this reminds me of? Just a thought that you guys mentioned the Lampoon earlier on
Yeah.
that shot.
The
Where
first,
it's
the
like,
first cover, yeah.
yeah,
Buy this or shoot this dog, something like that. I think that was the cover
yeah.
line.
That's another OG thing. You have to know who we're talking about here. Go back and look it up. Google it.
Yeah, this was great. This is when they reunited after their long estrangement. Tommy had been on the cover alone 3 times. I shot Tommy for the cover 3 times along with this. This was shot at the Troubadour after their press conference when the press showed up to welcome them back to the fold and before they went on tour with Live Nation. So I went upstairs and shot this right here.
And
And
I missed this earlier when we were talking about legends that you photographed, but
he's one of the icons for sure. I
Yeah.
took that as a house, his retirement community up in Massachusetts. I also shot him about 20 years earlier as well. The nicest man in the world. I mean, seriously, you sit down with him, and it's like he's been your friend forever. And the guy's so brilliant. I mean, he's written so many books, and he writes books by talking into the computer. He doesn't write with. I couldn't believe it. He would just sit there and just talk. He's a guy using punctuation as he goes along. Just brilliant, man. Yeah, I shot this after a snowfall in
It
Colorado.
looks frosty.
Yeah, yeah, snow cap.
if I've already put up a picture, let me
Oh,
know.
no. This one, we went up into the Hollywood Hills in order to shoot this, and this is a true story. I mean, we were up there shooting this, and through the L.A. helicopters, L.A. police came over us 3 times because people have some very, very expensive homes up in the hills. I guess they saw us wandering around, and the last time the helicopter came, they just hovered over us. So I took my reflector and put it over the scene and acted like we were taking pictures of each other, like for some kind of modeling kind of gig. And as soon as he just hovered there for a while, finally started to go away. I said, "Let's get out of here. This is getting ridiculous."
Now,
This
did
is
you
Rick
say-
Cusick. He was the associate publisher for High Times for a long time, but he also had this very, very kind of spooky look. So for a Halloween,
Yeah, very Vincent Price. I'm gonna take
Yeah.
a bong rip with some vampire blood.
Well, that was tomato juice that I put in the bong, and so I bought a little costume tux, and he was a great model. I used so many people from High Times for illustrative shots. I mean, I had a lot of fun doing that because I really tried to be as creative as I could. This is one of the prettiest girls that I've ever shot. She was up for the cover so many times and did not make it. I just don't know why. I shot a number of models throughout my career, and she was just one of the most photogenic. And just here, I think, what is wrong with the shot? Why couldn't this been a High Times cover?
I honestly thought
because she
that
wouldn't
was,
smoke, right?
I honestly thought that was like some supermodel that I just didn't know who that was.
Once again, back to the hemp fields in Amsterdam. Yeah, went to Ben Dronker's fields. Hemp. I can't remember hemp. Cannot think of the name of his company, but anyway, he had acres and acres of hemp. He made. This is all turned into horse bedding for horses in their stables. So it's really amazing stuff.
So none of it went to the coffee houses.
This was shot. This is one of B.E. Smith's gardens, and like I say, as a photographer, I always like to, sometimes you get lucky with the sun. More than likely you won't, but this time I got lucky with the sun. This is not with a filter. This was just luck. So there you are. Now this was shot I was at the highest incorporated city in North America, which is Alma, Colorado, which is at about 10,500 feet. So we went up to about 12,000 feet and shot this photo right here of these buds from the dispensary in Alma, High Country Healing. And that tree in the background is a bristlecone tree, one of the oldest living plants in America, in the world. It's as many as 1,000 to 2,000 years old. So kind of a cool thing. Now, this shot was Trinity County, out in the middle of Trinity County. People, outdoor growers would buy a patch of land, pretty cheap out there back then. And they'd grow their plants out there like that.
Now it's cheap. It's hiding it in the national parks.
Well, they're not growing the national parks. That's a whole different story. People doing that.
Yeah, but you did once go to Mount Rushmore.
Oh, the Mount Rushmore thing. Jeez. Yeah, I had a model up there. We were going to shoot right in front of we went up. You were not supposed to stop the car, but we did it anyway, right, to the side. So I pulled up on a ridge so I could get the model in front of Mount Rushmore. And right then the cops showed up, and we had buds at the top of the ridge. And so we dropped the buds, and they told us to come down from the ridge. So we came down the ridge, and what are you doing up there, and so forth and so on. And, they stopped us for 20 minutes, looked at our license, and so forth and so on. And our model was so cool. She said, "I left my sweatshirt up there. Can I go back up there to the ridge and get it?" And she was so cute. And they said, "Oh, yeah, go ahead, go get it." So she went up there and brought the buds back, wrapped up in her sweatshirt, right by the cops, and got into the car. Like, wow. So, yeah, I had
That's
some
an awesome model.
Yes, yes.
so cool. It was a close call. It really was, because they really wanted to know what we were doing. I said, "Look, I'm just," she had a spandex shorts on with red, white, and blue. I said, "Look, we're just shooting a 4th of July kind of thing, in front of Mount Rushmore." And, they weren't buying it. I don't know, but they finally did. I guess they let us go. Yeah. I know I've had a tremendous amount of experiences. Truly, I was there on 2014 on January 1st. I was the first person to buy pot in Colorado on the recreational level, which also means that I was the first person to buy recreational pot in the United States. Now, there were other people at 8 a.m., but I have the receipt that says 8 a.m. We stood there at the dispensary. I said, "Punch this in right at 8 o'clock on the dot." And so I have the receipt. It says I bought the first quarter ounce right there.
Nice.
I know that over in Michigan, when they finally went adult use, John Sinclair, I think, was at the front of the line.
He should be. He should be. John's an amazing guy. John went to our Cannabis Cups. He's still going strong. I mean, he's got some health problems, but he still shows up at rallies. He shows up at the Hash Bash. He speaks. He's an icon, not only in Michigan, but John Lennon supported this guy. People don't really understand this. John Lennon saw what happened to this guy for what he did in Ann Arbor and supported him. I remember when I went to the University of Michigan, and I talked to John about it. I said, "Hey, when I was there, the first year I was there, they were raffling off raffling off a pound of pot." And he goes, "Yeah, that was me. I did that." So it was kind of a cool thing. So the Ann Arbor Sun did that, and he said, "Yeah, we gave away a pound." That was great, because the University of Michigan at that time, it was a $5 desk appearance ticket for smoking in the street. Ann Arbor was so far ahead of its time. So that's where I got my master's degree. It was fantastic, where I really, really gained an appreciation for pot.
I wonder. I mean, so in Florida, we have all these like kind of tales about Gainesville and how it was like such a marijuana friendly place. Did you get to experience that at all?
Experience what? I'm sorry.
Gainesville, and
Fort Ganja.
Yeah.
No, I'll tell you, High Times, I think, really did the South a disservice. We never really covered the South as much as we should have. And I had some real good offers that I really wanted to explore in Alabama. People were really growing some great stuff out there. We never really covered the South. I mean, remember, we were going to the places that were the easiest to get to. And we're doing the Michigan, Colorado, California, where the things were in swing. So the other places we knew about were kind of like much smaller in scale. And we really relied on personal growers and stuff like that. But as I said, I think we could have done a lot better with the South when I was there.
Oh, the American South has always been an issue, with how hard they've gone for prohibition. I mean, for me, what got me into this movement, my father was diagnosed in 2010 with a terminal form of dementia, and cannabis seemed to be the only thing research-wise that helped, that could do anything. And, back then we didn't have medical marijuana in Florida. It wasn't something that was legal. And I got arrested coming home one day, with his medicine on me. And, falsified police reports, ended up pushing it into the felony range. And like you said, I had my car taken from me, civil forfeiture, my laptop, my cell phone, like I'm working for Pablo Escobar for something for a half an ounce a week. Like, come on.
I know. I tell you this much, I've been incredibly fortunate, because I was surrounded by a lot of pot over the years for 25 years at High Times, and I still was doing a lot of work afterwards as well. And so I mean, I remember we did a little survey at High Times how many people had busted on an editorial staff of 14 or 15, about 6 or 7. So you're about 40% of the staff had been busted for pot, and this was before they worked for High Times. So, this is ridiculous. I mean, how many people have been arrested? Remember, the war on drugs has been a war on pot smokers. Most of the arrests have been made for pot possession or pot dealing or pot, made up conspiracy cases. That's what the war on drugs has been on. I don't think they want to go after meth people because they're too goddamn dangerous. But pot people, they have their gardens, and they don't fight back. That was the whole thing about the Operation Pipe Dreams and Operation Headhunter with these bongs that were gone after. These people had shops, they had retail licenses, they had vendor licenses, and here the U.S. Marshals come in and just trash everything, trash all their and seize their assets. I mean, so, right in plain sight. So suddenly you're illegal. I mean, this country is so upside down sometimes. It truly is.
And we in Florida have had our fair shares of ups and downs. I mean, just our last Commissioner of Agriculture, but prior to our current one, was heavily involved in the MEP, the Marijuana Elimination Project.
Yeah.
And
Well, you have John Boehner, former Speaker of the House, a big anti-drug warrior. He's in the cannabis business now. I mean, how do you discount an entire life of putting people in jail? How do you say it's okay now? It's okay for me, geez.
yeah, he has a house over in what's the name of that island right off the coast of Naples there, Marco Island.
Oh,
He has his house, and that was one of the reasons why he decided to make certain that Acreage, his company that he was on, had anchored themselves in South Florida.
Right.
And as it turns out, they actually sold off that license to Red, White, and Bloom.
Yeah.
Who carries the High Times brand right now in their red version. Right. And I haven't been impressed. I'm just saying.
A lot of creepiness in this industry. There's no doubt about it. A lot of people, we wish weren't in the industry. And what you said at the beginning of the show, Chris, is how the individual growers are being threatened across the country. This has all gone corporate, or there's a move to make it all corporate. So these are very, very important issues to anybody who wants to grow a little pot of their own and be legal.
Well, they make it so difficult too to recruit solid talent. One of the key, Gary talked about when he worked on the initial bill, and one of the key provisions that they stuck on it was you had to pass a level 2 background check to work for a dispensary. Yeah. Well, I mean, that would eliminate, like you just said, half of your veteran staff at High Times back in the day if they had to pass a level 2 background check. So how can a corporate industry recruit the best cultivation talent if when we know that, like you said, probably half of them have some type of criminal record?
Well, that's the funny thing about the Hemp Industries Association. All these hemp companies back in 94, 93, it was all pot money, man. That was all pot money that started these companies. As a matter of fact, pretty good indication that even Ben and Jerry may have started their company with pot money. They had, because certainly I interviewed them, and they had a great appreciation for cannabis, believe me. They are very cool.
We hope to get Randy Lanier on the next couple of weeks. I know we got Richard Belisi coming up. That's going to begin our show pretty soon. And I know that his racing career was pretty much funded having to do with the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of folks don't realize that.
Yeah. Believe me, I'll tell you some of the money that I've seen, because, it's an all money business. So, you see a lot of money changing hands. I remember going into a dispensary before things were really getting legal, and a guy came in with a great big, whole bunch of keef, and the guy just reaches into the door, throws 10,000 at him, bundled up across the desk. I'm like, wow, I think I'm in the wrong business here, seriously. So you get to see a lot of money. I remember being in a dispensary in Bakersfield, and man, these guys, they got busted eventually, but there was so much money stacked up going through money machines. It was unbelievable. It truly was. This is before there were real crackdowns. This is before. So people were making some serious money, no doubt about it.
Well, it's interesting to see the motivation of some of the older folks who served a lot of time. Like, for instance, we have Donnie Clark over here, who served, I think it was 25 years. He had a life sentence, and Clinton went ahead and pardoned him at the end of his term. And he was one who developed Mayaka Gold, which was a legendary strain over here, along with some of the other ones. And he just wanted to get into it because he was a master farmer. And he wanted to be able to grow this thing in a master farmer sense. And he did things that people weren't doing in the 1980s, like vacuum sealing all the stuff and taking all the seeds out before. It wasn't even cents a million. He wanted to make sure no one stole his genetics.
Well, I remember going to Humboldt County, and that's one of the historical facts about Humboldt County. Nobody was separating the males and females until some Hawaiian guy came along and said, "What the hell? What are you guys doing?" And the word got out. And that's when Sinsemilla came to the fore, and Humboldt County became this, mecca of pot growing. But it was one guy who came in and told somebody, the word got around. So back then, man, we were smoking some bad stuff. I'm telling you.
Oh man, I look at these old High Times covers, and you see some of the headlines, and it's like, are your plants male or female? And just to ask that question in the modern era seems so out of place.
Oh, I know it. I know it. I remember this is some Michael Stetler who had a dispensary out in Pueblo, Colorado. He hired some new people, and he said, "Okay, go out there, go out and show me the males and the females." And the guy just panicked. I don't know. It's kind of like the basics of pot growing,
What do you think of the last prisoner project that is going on right now? Do you think it is effective? Do you think it's working for helping to get those guys out?
I don't know. You're appealing to politicians. You're appealing to governors. You're appealing to people who have, political capital to spend where they want to spend it or not. The fact is nobody should be in jail for pot. And we should really be at that case at this point. The fact is Joe Biden is not really a proponent of pot. And Kamala Harris is kind of, lukewarm. It's not one of her major issues. She talks a good game. So, people are still in jail for care. It's just bizarre how you can be in for smoking or selling a little weed. Come on. The fact is, I saw that meme on Facebook the other day. And it said, geez, we used to, sell pot in order to pay our bills. Now the government's selling pot to pay their bills. That's, that's basically the story. Yeah. So I don't know how effective it is. I haven't, I haven't really, any movement that's trying to get people out of jail is great. I don't know how effective it would be because you're dealing with individual politicians that you have to deal with. You're not dealing with some, you know, organization that you can talk to and say, this is not right. You got to talk to individual politicians.
It's the old adage about the fact that the fish always rots from the head down.
Yeah.
Well, and Malcolm, the struggle that I have is in politics. When you're young, you see it as, or at least it's sold to you as good guys and bad guys. And the truth is that it doesn't matter what side of the aisle they're on. It seems to be all bad people in many ways. I did an expose here not too long ago in Florida, for the Democratic Party, showing how private prisons are buying off Democratic leaders. So you can't get prison reform if you're taking checks from the private prisons that want to keep their ranks full.
Right. Who are those politicians who aren't doing that? I know a lot of people don't like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I think she's wonderful. I think she's a smart woman, and I think she's, talking a good game. So
a lot of folks don't realize this, but Chris was actually a founder of the short-lived the Democratic Cannabis Caucus for the Democratic Party.
Short-lived so much that our launch party got us shut down. The security at the hotel at the Western Diplomat shut it all the way down.
I believe I've been through that. I remember at the second HIA conference, we were in Albuquerque, and everybody started smoking pot. Everybody was smoking pot like crazy. And the hotel had also scheduled a Bible conference at the same time. Oh my God. So the Bible conference really started complaining about all the pot smokers. It was really, it was something else. I mean, we had security coming into all the rooms, looking for pot and stuff like that. What a wild time. So, that was the Stone Age of pot. Things aren't that much better. You can't smoke really pretty much anywhere. That's why I love people like Mason Tvert, who really, says, let's have a smoking lounge at the Denver airport. It's legal. All right.
Well, I found that interesting when I was leaving the Santo Domingo airport. Campbell's had a smoking lounge, and I just thought, wow, how much easier and more calm would I be getting on this flight if I could just spark up a joint or, fire up my portable dab rig right before I get on the plane.
Well, the worst thing of all is I remember I was on vacation in Mexico, coming back with my wife, and we went, and as we get to the waiting area to get on the flight, you had to go through two huge alcohol custom shops. I mean, these are just shelves of gleaming bottles of every single color of booze, and they're saying, buy it, buy it, buy it, buy it, buy it, buy it. This is amazing. I mean, because this is alcohol, for God's sake. We know all the damage that alcohol does. And here we are saying, buy it cheap. You're on vacation. Come on, it's cheap here. And there are two of the stores.
Yeah, and then there's like, oh, it's tax-free too, duty-free.
Right, exactly. So, cannabis has still got a long way to go as far as I'm concerned. It really does. Yeah,
they give a whole new meaning to the word ad valorem tax when we're talking about the percentage of taxes that people are paying, especially in the adult use states right now.
Right.
I mean, here in Florida, it's tax-free, but they raised the price enough to make it that
Yeah,
you
but
and
by
then end up spending money on expensive boof.
right, and these customs, they're also selling cartons of cigarettes as well. So here, buy the poison, buy the poison, you know, and this is all government sanctioned.
We're a long way from duty-free cannabis in the airports, but we'll get there eventually.
Right.
I still like to go ahead and get the consumption lounge into the airports. You have a heck of a lot less unruly passengers that way, wouldn't you think so?
Oh,
As opposed to having a bar.
yeah. Well, people always say, "Well, that person next to me smells like pot. I can't sit next to them on the plane." You're going to get that kind of thing. It's just got a
Well,
long. Oh, as I said, Kerry.
3 weeks ago, the governor of Florida said he would not be in favor of recreational legalization because of the putrid smell of pot. And
Yeah.
coming from a Harvard guy who used to probably smoke a boatload of pot when he was at Harvard, I just find that so phony. I
Well,
can't stand it.
just speaking to his base the same way that Trump did. DeSantis is an ass. I mean, truly, he's a bad guy, and that's what he did. These people do. They play to their base. The religious people. Well, yeah, he's a terrible smell. These pot people. I don't. It's just stigmatizing another group. That's the politics of the Republican Party.
You'd think that a politician would actually look at the polls
Yeah,
and just
yeah.
see just how much public approval there is for that thing that he's shooting down because he wants to go for his base, which happens to be vocal but minor.
Well, back in the '90s, I remember Dennis Barone telling me, he said, no one gets elected here unless they support pot. No one. That's all there is to it. San Francisco was, well ahead of the rest of the country as far as that kind of stuff goes.
And DeSantis would be, I wouldn't be mildly surprised to know how many of his legislators, and I'm not going to call them out right now because I have to deal with them during session, but how many of them do imbibe and occasionally do a quick hot box in between sessions.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what drives me crazy is the hypocrites, right? There was that one gentleman in New York. He was an assemblyman, and he was speaking out against a legalization bill. This was probably about 5 years ago. And then he got arrested for hotboxing in his car during the recess.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it's just all the time, seriously. The people come around, people who don't like pot. Look, not everybody does. I remember Ali G, Sacha Baron Cohen, for example, going back into, what I've done. He doesn't smoke pot. He said it gave him a headache, and we did his photograph. I directed the photo shoot. I didn't shoot that particular cover, but he said, no, I don't smoke pot, but it should be legal. He said, but I don't like smoking. It gives me a headache. And for a lot of people, it is like that. But they understand at least that it should be legal. Penn Jillette, I interviewed him. He's never taken a drink, let alone taken a puff on a pot. He's done no drugs whatsoever. And he was very, very interesting because he said, I don't know why that fact should be so interesting to everybody that I haven't done a drug. But the thing is, he's a big libertarian, and he's totally for the fact that people should be able to smoke pot or do what they want with it because it's a plant. So there are a lot of very, very intelligent people, who understand the issues. A lot of the anti pot issues are kind of based in religion. I mean, if you hear the rhetoric, it's very, very much based in fundamentalism. Our body's a temple. Jesus doesn't want you to do this. Jesus, somebody doesn't want you to do drugs. Remember, it's a drug. You can't find your way to the Lord if you're doing drugs.
Malcolm, if you know anything about me, I would love to sit here and talk marijuana and how religion sucks.
Well,
this guy got kicked out of the Coptic Church for not being enough of his donor.
The truth is that we've already ran pretty long. I have to say, you mentioned there's a lot of intelligent people out there that get it, and you, sir, are one of those people. And you've been a driving force in making sure that there's more intelligent people out there that get it. So thank you very much for all of your work and all that you've done. Just take a moment, let people know, how they can get a hold of you, how they can support you, and what's going on with you right now.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you can always, my website's malcolmmckinnon.com or nativeamericanphotography.com. They go to the same place. Instagram is McKinnon Photos. As I said, I'll be getting this book done probably within the next, hopefully next month. By the middle of next month, it'll be done. And then there's the whole point of getting it out, marketing and logistics of doing that. So I'll be notifying everybody, and I'll be developing websites devoted to getting the book out there. Well, so that's
maybe you can commit right now that once you get the book out, you can come on the rotation to promote it.
oh man, definitely. I'll go anywhere to promote it. Listen,
Thanks again, man. Yeah.
thanks for having me. It's been great.
And Kano, how can you join Suncoast Normal?
Well, of course, you can go to suncoastnormal.org, go to our membership section, click the PayPal link, and you can join through PayPal with a recurring membership. For $25 a year, you get your Suncoast Normal membership card. You get a gold leaf lapel pin, and you get a 25% discount there at Chillum. And once you've ordered your membership package, you can come pick it up in person there at Chillum. Carlos has an amazing array of awesome supplies and all your smoking needs that you might need there. So definitely a lot of value built into that membership. But more than that, we are doing everything we can to promote responsible and sustainable business in the cannabis industry, to bring together small business and patients. And so on April 23rd, we are sponsoring the Tampa Bay Cannabis Business Expo. If you are interested in as a cannabis business owner, whether you're in the hemp side of things, whether you're an MMTC or a doctor's clinic, maybe you're a legal referral service, you want to get involved, this would be the business expo for you to attend. It's the weekend after 420, so pretty excited. Hit us up at info@suncoastnormal.org if you're interested in a vendor or sponsorship opportunity.
And by the way, all these awesome guests that we've been having on the rotation, gotta say, it's all due to this guy right here. Thank you very much, Gary, for all of your hard work.
Oh, no problem. It's cost me a fortune.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And it was absolutely fantastic having you. We'd like to have you back on again soon. And as soon as I finish my book, you finish your book, we'll go on a tour together.
All right.
Love it.
Bye, everybody.